Hey guys, back with another video on the YXZ, and on the last trip out we crossed over the magical 20-hour mark for the break-in period, so it's time to do the 20-hour service, and so I thought I'd cover that in this video. Actually, I'll do it in 3 separate videos. The bulk of what you're going to do with the 20-hour service is check things like the brake pads and the hoses and the plugs and stuff like that. Is a lot of just inspection kind of stuff, and correcting any sort of issues that might arise. The bulk of the work that you're going to actually do then is replace the engine oil, change the engine oil and the oil filter. You're going to change the oil in the transmission and in the front and rear differentials, and then clean and replace the primary air filter. So we're going to do that in a handful of videos here, multi-segments here, and let's get started on that. Okay, to do the oil change on the YXZ 1000, these are some of the tools you're going to need. Again, I'm using a cordless impact drill with a socket attachment on it to make the job a little faster getting the skid plate off. I've got a 10mm socket for the skid plate. I've got my 5mm Allen key that I'm going to need for the drain bolts. Manual with specs and capacities. Torque wrench. Some paper towels. I got 3 quarts of Mobil 1 1040 Racing 4T oil. That's what you need for, this is a motorcycle engine. Again, I'm using Mobil 1. You can use whatever it is your preference. The manual calls out that it'll take anything from essentially 1030 to 2050 depending on the temperature of the area that you're riding in. 1040 kind of covers that middle ground, so that's what I'm going with. I've got the Yamaha oil filter. This is the, let's see if there's a model, there it is. You can read that. The 5GH-13440-00. Oil filter, and then I got my pump as well as a gravity feed based tube to put the oil in. I'm not sure which one I'm going to use yet. We'll see when I get these off. I'm probably going to go and use a pump since he's got the wider nozzle, and that'll be most of what you need to get this job done. So let's get into it. Okay, before you start your oil change, you want to get your motor up to temperature to get the oil flowing through the system, thin it out a little bit so that it'll drain everything out a little bit more efficiently. So go ahead and start your car up and look at your temperature gauge right here, and you want to get up to 50-60 degrees at least to get it into a little bit better condition to do the oil change. Okay, I went ahead and already pulled the skid plate off so you can see underneath. You're going to need to do that because you got to access the oil filter and stuff, which is covered by the skid plate. But let me show you where some things are that we're going to need to do to get this job complete. So, looking right in here, that's where the oil filter is. The vent cap for the crankcase is right there. Then going underneath here, let's get a little closer look at the drain hole. So here's the oil filter, and then let's see if I can get to the drain hole, which is, I believe it's this guy right here, because you can see it's got the extra washer and stuff on it, and that's where you're going to need the 5mm Allen key to drain the bottom. Sorry about the shakiness. Let's come back around out here. The other thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have to pull off this cover here because access to the oil tank is right here. To get to the drain of the oil tank, we've got to remove this cover right here. These are more 10 millimeters. Okay, so we got to get to all of that stuff off, and then we'll get it drained. Okay, I'm going to hit that drain bolt. Just like that. And while that's draining, I'm going to clean this bolt up. Using a ratchet and an oil filter wrench. There we go. While that's draining, we're going to pull off the cover. Now we have access to the tank. Now we just got to hit this drain bolt here once we plug everything up back down there. Drain the oil out of the tank. Once you pull all the pins out of the cover, it just pops off. Like that. And allows you access to the oil tank, which is going to be right in there. I've actually seen a video where a guy put in a marine hatch on top so you could get to the oil tank without having to pull everything off. Basically, it works the same as the hatch on the other side. So, like this. Put a patch just like this on the other side. So, I'm probably going to do that. I'll shoot a video of that when I do it to make the job a little bit easier. But let's go ahead and start pulling everything apart. So, we're going to pull the cover off. Generally, it's a good idea to clean that up before you do this so you don't get any debris or dirt falling in there. I'm going to go ahead and pull the crankcase cap off. Okay, to drain the wet reservoir tank, this is a 12 millimeter. I forgot to include that socket in the opening shot with all the tools you need, so make note of that. I've got my drain pan here. It's sitting on a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, which is sitting on a toolbox to get it up high enough so I can catch that so it'll drain without splashing and making a mess. You've got to be careful because that tank is aluminum and it's easy to damage. Drain that off. Okay, with everything drained, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the drain bolt. And I've already cleaned everything off and inspected it. So I'm going to pop that back in. This torques down to the same as the differential up front, and which is 10 Newton meters, 7.4 foot-pounds, I believe. So something like that. So we're gonna crank this guy down. Okay, before installing the oil filter, I want to clean off the mating surface here, so I don't have any grit or anything that might cause a leak. Yep, that feels good. Then I also put some oil on the O-ring here so that way it won't bind up or anything. It'll seat properly and won't leak. Spin that on. And then we're going to torque it down to 12 foot-pounds. Okay, with that drained, we're going to put the bolt back in. I've already cleaned it all up, and I've cleaned the surface of the tank up as well. And then this tightens down to 12 foot-pounds. Okay, that done, we are ready to put the covers back on, put all the filler caps, or put the crankcase cap on, and start putting oil in it. Okay, I've got my funnel with my filler tube on there, pointing into the oil reservoir. The manual says, and what I've seen some other people do, it says to put 2 liters of oil in the oil reservoir. Start the motor up, rev it a few times, and then put the rest in to top it off. With the pump, what I did is I don't like the idea of starting it without any oil in the crank, so I threw a little bit of oil in the crankcase just to kind of give it a little bit of lubrication down there, so it's not too bad. If you go look at 6 Gear's video as well, he's got some great videos out there on doing this stuff as well. He filled up his oil filter as well before he installed it so that he had oil in the bottom, which I think is also a good idea. So we're going to go ahead and get the oil in there now and then start it up and top it off. Okay, we got our 2 liters in. We're going to go ahead and fire it up and see how it sounds. So there you heard it. You heard it does sound really crappy for a couple of seconds as everything primes up. It doesn't sound like there's any way to avoid that. We've got our 2 liters in. We're going to top off the rest. It's 2.7 liters total. So we're going to just finish that off right now. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We topped everything off. We're good. We got oil right between the hash marks where we want them. Came up to be right around 2.7 liters, which was 2.85 quarts, I believe is what it was. I did a cursory look, make sure there's no leaks or anything from any of the, nothing coming from the filter, nothing coming from the drain bolt or the reservoir drain bolt. So I think we're good. And last thing is to put the skid plates back on. I'm going to hold off on doing that because I'm doing the transmission oil next, and we'll videotape that as well, and then we'll put it all back together and it'll be ready to ride.